This is my house. You just can't knock it down.
That bank robbed me of everything I own.
Look, lady, why don't you forget it? It's all over with.
I can't. Didn't they rob me of my house?
Oh, I guess you could say that.
Well, I'm going to rob them.
Rob a bank? That's crazy.
And you're going to help me. This is a stick-up. I've got a gun in my purse. How would you like to have your guts spilled all over this floor?
The bank! Oh, they're robbing your bank.
You know, really, half of it should be mine.
The bank didn't take any money from you.
The U.S. Bank of New Mexico was robbed by two who appeared to be classic examples of the now generation.
One more, I promise.
No, sir, Bob. One bank is one thing, but two banks? No, sir. I'm not going to do it.
We're dealing with a new criminal element. Young, radical, anarchist bank robbers.
I didn't rob the bank for myself. I did it for my kids.
We're not talking about actors. We mean a real monster.
I brought her back. She'll live and I'll get her another body.
They're going to catch me, but don't let anyone see me like that. Please, doctor, help me.
Biologically speaking, it's of primary importance that man should want to mate. Hey, that...
You don't get all your kicks from surfing, do you?
We want to be free to ride our machines without being hassled by the man. And we want to get loaded.
You think you're gonna make a slave of the world? I'll see you in hell first!
The American International Podcast.
Are you ready?
Hello and welcome to the American International Podcast. I'm Jeff Markin.
And I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And today we are looking at a rather obscure movie in the American International Pictures catalog, 1971's Bunny O'Hare.
Do we want to tell them how we picked this movie?
Well, like all of our movies, they're picked randomly.
That's right. We have a list of all the AIP movies that we can access. And a random number generator picked this movie for us. So if you're wondering, with all the movies in the AIP catalog, why are they going with this one? Well, just thank the gods of randomosity.
So Bunny O'Hare was directed by Gerd Oswald and written by Stanley Z. Cherry and Coslough Johnson. And none of these people are people that I'm familiar with.
No, but Gerd Oswald was a TV director. He did a lot of Outer Limits episodes. Comedy was not exactly his forte. He was more of a sci-fi drama guy.
Oh, there you go.
And then as for the writers, I don't know who they are. This was a true AIP production, though, with Samuel Arkoff and James Nicholson producing this movie.
The film stars Bette Davis as Bunny O'Hare, Ernest Borgnine as Bill Green,
a.k.a. William Gruenwald,
Jack Cassidy as Lieutenant Horace Greeley.
Horace Greeley is famous for the quote, "Go west, young man." Not this character, but the author.
Jay Robinson as John C. Rupert, Joan Delaney as R.J. Hart, John Astin as Ad, Reva Rose as Lulu, Karen Mae Johnson as Lola, Brayden Linden as Frank, Bruno Visoda as Lab Tech.
Just a cameo for him, but it was a fun one.
And Larry Linville as the Lineless Max.
I didn't get a name for him. He's just sort of like a heavy in this, and he doesn't have any lines. But it's kind of exciting to see, Frank Burns is in this. So the movie opens with some jaunty music, and we see a bulldozer coming down the street. And from a decal on the bulldozer, we can deduce that we're in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
The bulldozer is waved into a driveway, and we go inside to see Bunny O'Hare,
a.k.a. Bette Davis.
And she's speaking with, I guess, a banker.
Yeah, a very unsympathetic banker who is currently foreclosing on her house, even though she's in total denial about this. He says that he gave her 2 weeks to get out, and she didn't, and all her stuff is still in there. And she's upset because this house was listed at $5,000, and she's already paid $20,000 into it. And yet she's still behind on her mortgage, so she's losing it altogether.
And she's justifiably upset because of this. That's a lot of money to pay.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like 4 times the initial investment, and she still doesn't own it.
And what's interesting here is that the bank is going to just knock it down rather than try to recoup some of that money.
Yeah. I mean, they could turn that. Obviously, I'm thinking in like a 2023 headspace where any piece of property is worth investing in and selling or renting. It's a total cash cow there. And they're just going to bulldoze it all down, all their stuff in it, and just make kind of a giant eyesore. They are saving something from the house. They've called Ernest Borgnine in to take out the plumbing. He comes in and sees Bunny and asks where the head is. Obviously, that's military slang or Navy slang for the toilet. After that confusion is cleared up, she sends him off towards the bathroom, where he's not going to use the facility. He's going to take the facility. So he comes walking out with the toilet, and she sees that and gets all upset.
Bunny tells the banker that her kids live in Santa Fe, and she can call them for help and get some money. So she makes a call to her daughter, Lulu, and she's on the phone, and the phone is immediately disconnected by some guy who's on the floor, disconnecting the wiring.
Right, yeah. Just the phone, though. They're not taking out the electrical or anything like that. Like, it seems like that might be a hazard of some kind.
So she asks Bill, Ernest Borgnine, to keep an eye on things, watch the house, make sure that they don't do anything while she runs across the street to make a phone call. So she runs to a payphone.
Yeah, conveniently located right across the street.
And makes another call to Lulu.
Can't do that anymore. Lulu is very self-interested here because she doesn't really give her mom a chance to talk. She just starts nattering on about how, well, you called and then you were there and then you were gone and I called back and I couldn't get a hold of you. And so Bunny never gets a chance to explain what's happening.
Because the bulldozer is going through the house. That's
right. Before she can even say one thing to Lulu, the corner of the house is being caved in. So she screams and runs over there. Apparently Bill, the plumbing uninstaller, has just barely gotten out with his life with the bathroom sink. And she's angry at him for allowing this to happen.
Yeah, she chastises him for not trying to stop them. And he's like, well, that's not my job. I'm here for the plumbing.
Right, yeah. You can't stop progress, right?
But he's a nice guy, so he sees that she's in a tight spot, so he offers her a ride to wherever she wants to go, probably thinking that she's not going to accept.
Right, or that if, it's just down the street or to the bus stop or something. So she packs up her few remaining belongings. They fit in a carpet bag, and she agrees to go with him.
So they're driving along, and they stop at a service station.
This is the 70s, so you don't pump your own gas.
No, a full service here.
That's right. But Bill has to wait because there's another customer being served and there's only one attendant. So there's going to be a little delay in him getting the gas he needs. Bunny uses this time to go in and try to make another phone call.
Yeah. Bill tells her that now is the time to do anything she may want to do. And she chooses to make another phone call.
Yeah, she doesn't need the bathroom. Of course, her toilet's in the back of the truck if she does. Anyway.
So she calls Lulu again. And we learn that her husband...
her husband.
Lloyd is a butcher who's had some sort of mental breakdown.
Yeah, he's just sort of like staring into his cereal, unable to kind of cope with life, apparently. A real sad sack.
As the cat is eating his cereal.
Yeah, the cat jumps up on the counter. So Lulu has no time to listen. She's complaining about Lloyd's work travails. He just can't cut another slice of liver, I guess.
Yeah, he's been assistant butcher for a long time, and he should be head butcher by now.
So she made him ask for a promotion, and he got fired. That resonated so very much with me.
Because apparently cutting liver for 4 years will destroy a man's mind.
Yes, I'm going to have to take their word for it, because I've never...
been a man.
I've never been a man. I've never done anything with liver except my own. I haven't really treated that one very well. Apologies to my liver.
So Lulu takes this opportunity to ask Bunny for some money.
So, yeah, total reverse. I feel like Bunny should have known that this was going to be the case. Because, well, as we find out, the kids are takers. They're not givers. But maybe we should save that part for later.
Well, Bunny offers to help. She offers to come down right away because she needs a place to stay. So she has her motive.
Right. But Lulu's not about that. She's like, no, Mom, this is a terrible time for you to come down. So now Bunny has nowhere to go.
So now it's Bill's turn at the service pump, and he's trying to hurry up and get out of there, but the gas will only come out so fast.
Yeah, we get a sense very clearly that he's planning on ditching Bunny.
And Bunny makes another call, this time to her son, Ad.
This just looks so good. I have, a lot of feelings about this movie, but one thing I love is her son is Ad. It's Ad. Is played by John Astin. And he's hysterical in this movie. For one thing, we see him wearing a shorty robe, like just a little tiny, colorfully patterned robe. And he's on the phone, obviously talking to his mom. And he's got a way about him. It's very smarmy. He also does not want her to visit.
And Bill pays for his gas and gives the attendant some money to give to Bunny.
So she can get a bus.
Bus fare or whatever she needs. And he
almost gives away.
He hops in his truck, and the truck won't start right away. So as he's struggling with that, Bunny just hops in the car and says, "Sorry for keeping you waiting."
She's a sneaky one. She has no idea that she was about to be ditched, and Bill does not tell her. He does get his money back from the attendant, though. Yeah, he gets the truck started and starts to drive off, but then goes back to collect his money back that he had intended for Bunny, but did not intend for the attendant to keep. So road trip now.
Yeah, he still wants to figure out where to drop Bunny off, and she doesn't know where to go because her kids can't/won't help.
Right. She's a widow, by the way. Her husband had passed away when her kids were little. So she really doesn't know where to go.
And Bill says he's going to Mexico, and Bunny says that sounds pleasant enough.
Yeah, she's never been. Why not have a little vacation? He does not want to take her to Mexico, though.
No, he offers her bus fare again.
But it says, "Tonight you can camp out with me." So they drive and drive and drive through the back roads of New Mexico and find a camping space.
Yeah, they find a place to park for the night, and it's on a hill, downhill, so Bill grabs a big rock to put in front of the driver's side front tire so that the truck doesn't roll.
Yeah, apparently it's a hard start, and so being able to roll it down the hill will aid him in getting started on the following day.
That's what he says, anyway.
Yeah, that's what he says. So they sit in the back on an angle and kind of bond over their shared love of detective stories, which I guess is like the 1971 version of loving true crime podcasts or something. So they do have that in common. But after a couple of beers, it's bedtime.
Yeah, he grabs a sleeping bag for her, takes her outside, and finds a spot for her to camp out for the night, pretty far from the truck.
Yeah, she wonders, like, A, why outside? B, why so far away? But we know why.
So later that night, Bill is leaving his sleeping area on the other side of the road.
Right.
And sneaking into the truck.
Pulling out the rock and
started rolling down the hill.
Yep, he's ready to go. And then from the back, we hear Bunny screeching, like, "What are you doing?
What are you trying to do, kill me?"
Yeah.
But Bill can't stop the truck because the brakes are out.
Right. I mean, he's on a roll, literally, and it can't be stopped. So she's kind of like careening around back there with all the toilets and sinks and stuff.
And while everything's flying around, she finds a wanted poster with Bill's picture on it.
Yeah, except his real name is William Gruenwald, and he's a bank robber. And he's wanted for...
that's why it's a wanted poster.
That's right. He escaped from jail. So there's, kind of a manhunt out for him.
Bill is able to stop the truck, and he goes to the back to check on Bunny.
Yeah, he wonders, like, why did you come back in the truck? And
she's wondering, where were you going?
Yeah, where were you going without me?
He says he's going to go get breakfast. It's 10 p.m.
Yeah, but he wants to get some breakfast supplies for the morning, I guess. That's the lie. I mean, obviously, he was going to take off.
And she says she was cold, so she came inside. Now, she knows who he is.
Right, but she's keeping that to herself. She tucks the poster in her bosom. She's going to hold on to that information for later. So they decide to go get something to eat. So on the way to get something to eat, Bunny spots a branch of the Bank of New Mexico, and it makes her very angry. She says, "That bank robbed me of everything I own." And you can kind of see a little plot hatching in her head right now.
They find a place to eat, and the establishing shot is an A&W, but the food and drinks they get are from Dairy Queen.
Yeah, you can see the Dairy Queen logo on the cups. So continuity error must be. So now the plan comes to fruition. She confesses to Bill that she knows who he is, and she wants him to teach her to rob a bank.
He's reluctant because that's a life he's left behind him, and it's a dangerous life.
But she's kind of got the goods on him, and she's going to use that knowledge to force him to do what she wants. So what else can he do?
Training montage.
Obviously. This is fun. So we see, for some reason, they are getting in shape to rob a bank, which involves going to a kids' playground and messing around on the jungle gym and the merry-go-round and the climbing apparatus. There's a whole bunch of stuff there that she's trying to limber up and use.
And there's a bunch of kids just sitting around watching, and they're amused.
Yeah. Why are these old people here? Yeah, we should say, like, the movie has these people as senior citizens. They're really like 54 and 63 in age. So depending on your perspective, that's really old, or it's like, hey, that's not that old. But they look old, as all people did in the 70s.
It was probably only one day of training.
Yeah, I think it was.
But the effects are as if she's been training for at least a week.
A part of the training, though, also involves riding around on Bill's motorcycle. He had a motorcycle strapped to the front of his truck, which we'd seen before, but that's going to be the getaway vehicle for the bank robbery. So she has to learn how to ride on the back of that.
That evening, they're back in the trailer, and she says that she's just one solid lump of pain.
Oh, I feel that.
But she's ready to try and rob a bank. So the next day, they go to a branch of the Bank of New Mexico, and there are picketers outside.
Yep, they're protesting. I don't know how the bank is involved, but migrant workers aren't being paid what they're owed, and somehow the bank is responsible for that, and that's what they're protesting. So there's a big line of, sort of your standard issue hippies carrying picket signs and marching in front of the bank.
And Bunny and Bill are there to kind of case out the joint and...
yeah, get the lay of the land.
So she goes in and looks around, goes to a teller and gets dimes for her dollar.
Well, first the hippies kind of ask Bunny and Bill what they're in there for, and they recommend that they don't make a deposit, that instead they just make a withdrawal, and Bunny's like, oh yeah, that's what I'm going to do.
She goes back to Bill and says this is going to be easy, but Bill points out that there's a camera pointing right where she was standing, and that if she goes to rob the bank, her picture will be taken and they'll know who she is.
Yeah.
But she says that's not a problem.
She got an idea from the hippies that they talked to before the dime for dollar exchange. So they're going to be in disguise. She asks the female hippie, Lola, where she got her cool outfit. And then cut to Bunny wearing that exact same outfit. Hat, long hair, sunglasses, poncho. And also Bill is now disguised as well.
Yeah, he's disguised as Frank, Lola's friend and partner, I assume. And
partner in protest.
Frank looks like Jim Henson.
He's got a beard.
Bill does not. Bill just looks like Ernest Borgnine with a beard and sunglasses.
Yeah, he's fine if he keeps his mouth shut. But once he opens it, it's like, oh yeah, I know that guy.
Now that they're disguised, they ride the motorcycle back to the bank. And Bunny takes the opportunity to rehearse her lines.
This is a stick-up. Put the money in my purse.
And Bill says, no, not purse. You use a paper bag. It's the way things are. It's the way this is done.
Right, yeah. I guess, I don't know, purse, maybe they could grab your ID, or, I don't know, all your stuff will fall out. There's probably a big downside to a purse that I'm not aware of because I don't know how to rob a bank. Okay, so we cut to our foil. This is Jack Cassidy, plays Lieutenant Horace Greeley, the head cop in this caper film.
He's from the state police, and he's giving a talk to the...
local police?
The city police.
Yeah.
And before he goes up to the podium, he's looking out the window at the protesters, and...
yes, he's not thrilled.
And yeah, he does not appreciate that type.
Right, so he establishes that he's not a fan of hippies, he's not a fan of protesting, he's not a fan of young people.
So Bill pleads with Bunny one last time not to do this, because he'd hate to see her guts spill out all over the floor.
Oh, yeah, like opening a can of tomato soup. He's afraid she's going to get shot.
And that was a thought that hadn't occurred to her.
Right, yeah.
So she pauses for a moment, but then I guess she's okay with it because she says she's going to go in. And Bill decides that he's going to go with her.
Yeah, she thought she would just do it on her own, but he's like, I don't trust you to handle this without messing it up, which is good because she gets up to the teller window and she's kind of hesitant. She
flubs her line.
Yeah, she can't say the right words that this is a stick-up. So Bill says it.
And that gives her all the confidence because she confirms that this is indeed a stick-up.
Right, and that she does have a gun and she'll open him up like a can of tomato soup. So he's like, geez, lady, all right. and he starts pulling money out of his drawer and putting it into her paper sack.
Bill tells the teller not to set off the alarm until they've gone, and every teller in this movie is compliant with that request.
Yeah, they point to another customer in the bank and say that he's their associate and he's watching them. It's a big guy just kind of standing there. It has nothing to do with this, but he does look kind of menacing, I guess. But they literally just are out the door when the alarm goes off.
So they hop on the bike and they ride off.
Greeley and his police cronies hear the alarm go off, and they immediately give chase, which is kind of funny because he was just going on about how these anarchists are ruining America, and all of a sudden there's a bank robbery in progress.
And we should mention that all these banks have security.
But they're terrible.
But they're very incompetent.
It's like they hired people who were very nearsighted and then took their glasses away. They come out with guns drawn and they're ready to fire, but they couldn't hit the broadside of a barn at one pace. I mean, they just miss everything.
So Greeley jumps in his car to give chase, but he immediately hits a fire hydrant.
Yeah, it's very Keystone Cops all the way through this movie, where the police are shown as shockingly inept and incapable of achieving any kind of a collar.
And while trying to get away, Bill and Bunny take their motorcycle inside a mall.
Oh, yeah, this is like, if you've seen the Blues Brothers, when Jake and Elwood drive the cop car through the mall. Well, this came obviously, 10 years before that, give or take. But that's what happens. So they go into a mall, they're in a department store, running up and down the aisles. The cops are chasing them.
There's a motorcycle cop in pursuit.
Yeah, and there's a cop on foot going up the escalator, just kind of blindly shooting at stuff.
I don't know what store they ended up in, but it's obviously where Little Orphan Annie shops because her dress is tiny.
I saw that too. Yeah, maybe she put it on consignment or something. She back to being an orphan. I'm sure she just outgrew it.
So they ride back outside and down some stairs. The motorcycle cop is behind them, but he doesn't go down the stairs. And they wind up going back inside and driving through the lobby of the White Wine Rock Hotel.
That still exists to this day. It just looks very different now from what I read. So after the hotel, they kind of get away. It takes a little bit of maneuvering, but they're back on the road and they go back to their camp. And as after all good bank robberies, the best part is counting the haul.
Their take is $736.
That's about $5,500 in today's money.
Yeah, not a great haul, but it's enough to help Lulu, and that is why Bunny did this.
Right. And, heck, she only did, 10 minutes worth of work? I mean, she herself did almost nothing, and she gets all of it.
Now, Greeley is obsessed with this case because there was a bank robbery that happened right under his nose. And he has some sort of a vendetta against young people.
Right. And he blames them because he saw the protesters, so he just assumes that they had to be responsible for this.
Well, and they were disguised as hippies, so they were identified as young people.
Right. But he's laser focused on hippies now, and he will not be dissuaded. So Bunny and Bill go to the post office. They have the cash wrapped in a neat little parcel, and they're going to mail it to Lulu. They're putting stamps on the package, which seems to me, like, I know now we have PayPal and Zelle and Cash App, but it seems a shockingly risky way to send cash to someone else.
And Bunny checks out the wanted posters on the wall to see if Bill is there, and he is, but not where she's looking. We get to see it as they are exiting on another wall.
Right, so he is actually still a prime suspect. They're still looking for him. He tried to say that they don't care anymore, but obviously they do.
And I guess they're going to celebrate by going out to dinner or something because Bill's all dressed up.
And Bunny skimmed off some of the money that she meant to send to Lulu, enough to buy a new dress.
$22.95.
She looks very nice. It's not a romantic date, though. They're just celebrating. So
I think so, because it doesn't go anywhere. We don't get to see it. They're just dressed nice, and then we cut back to Greeley, who's working late and decides that he needs a young assistant, someone who knows and speaks the language of young people.
Oh, he does mention, though, that they rounded up 437 hippies, or young people, or now a generation, whatever you want to call them. So they're like really cracking down on the innocent population of 18 to 24-year-olds that just happen to be in his jurisdiction. But they didn't find anyone guilty there.
The next morning, as Bunny is making another phone call, Bill grabs a newspaper and reads about their exploits from the day before.
Yeah, that's exciting. Like, they have their picture and everything. They're famous.
And the story talks about the bank that was robbed by two who appear to be classic examples of the now generation.
Oh, obviously. I mean, Bette Davis is so hip and happening.
There's no answer at Lulu's house, so Bunny decides to try and call Ad.
Ad's still wearing that same bathrobe.
Is it the same one?
I mark when they change it. He wears that one twice, and then the girl wears it, and he wears another one, and then at the very end, he wears a third one.
The third one's long. The second one's long. The red one is long.
Yeah.
Compared to the others.
Yeah. You can still see his knees.
Ad says he needs $1,000 to close a deal with an oil syndicate.
Yeah, that will reap a huge investment for him and her if she just refinances her house, and sends him $1,000.
She agrees to send him the money, so he immediately calls Max,
his bookie,
his bookie, and promises him $1,000 on Saturday.
That he owes him. He's in debt to Max. And he also still wants to place another bet.
Yep, so he gets Max to carry him on $100 across the board on Flaming Dancer in the 5th race.
It should be noted here that he has a woman in the room with him who's making him a sandwich, very unappetizing looking sandwich, FYI. This is significant. It's like a running gag. So there's one chick in here. Next time we see him, it'll be a different chick.
So Bunny wants to rob another bank because now her son needs help.
Bill's not thrilled with this plan.
No, he's not going to participate again. No more banks for him because he's left this life behind and he's just a plumbing collector now.
A plumbing engineer. But after he says no, just smash cut to him helping her rob a bank. And they have a new gimmick this time. It's a bird.
Yeah, he sets a canary loose, which works as a great distraction because this bank has 3 security guards, and they're all trying to catch this bird, along with what looks like another teller and maybe a customer. Yeah,
this is totally upended the normal operations of the bank. So while everyone's off chasing the bird, Bunny is able to score a buttload of cash from the teller, who puts it straight in her paper sack.
They ride off as the alarm goes off, and the security guards rush outside, and bumbling as they are, they kind of pose with their guns.
Yeah. They do get off a shot, and they shoot a hole through a mirror on the back of a passing truck. It's a very slapstick move. So now it's time to mail Ad some money, but the stamp machine is broken, and Bill complains about being ripped off.
Now, Greeley has some evidence to work with. He has a canary feather that requires analysis.
So we get the sense that Greeley is also an idiot, because what's one feather going to tell him? Luckily for him, his new assistant has come, the one that he requested from his police chief. It's R.J. Hart, and he's very excited to meet R.J. Hart. And if you haven't guessed by now that R.J. Hart is not a guy, then you don't know movies.
R.J. Hart is 22, straight A's, working for a master's in social sciences, specializing in criminology.
And she's a girl.
And a girl.
Yeah, she's very pretty. So he's obviously upset that... I don't know if upset's the word, but he's
taken aback.
Yeah, he's not expecting a woman, but she reminds him that he's a stickler for the law, and there are laws against discrimination based on sex. And so he's begrudgingly going to accept her now.
And he says that we're dealing with a new criminal element, young, radical, anarchist bank robbers.
That's right. And he expects her to help him solve this case. I don't know how, because he never once listens to her. RJ asks Greeley if he sent the details of this bank robbery, their MO, to Washington to get some background information. And Greeley says, of course he sent the MOs to Washington. I don't know if that's a lie or not. And then he takes this feather and takes it to the filing cabinet and files it under F. But claims he knows what he's doing.
And back at the truck, Bunny is explaining to Bill that she didn't rob the banks for herself. She did it for her kids, which I'm not sure why she feels the need to reiterate this, because it seems pretty obvious since she's mailing off all the money.
She should be taking care of herself. She has nowhere to live. All her assets have been stolen by this bank. She deserves something. But she's very self-sacrificing.
Now, Bill gathers his things. He's going to go outside. It's a cold and windy night, and Bunny says it's fine for him to stay in there.
Because they're too old to do anything. Insert your own opinion on that. Being 50 and 60-somethings don't have sex, I guess.
Well, even if something did happen, who would care?
That's true. Nobody would care. Okay, so we're back at the police station. And they did, in fact, send those MOs to Washington because now they sent back some information on people they might want to look at.
And they're all old-timers. And Greeley is sure it's no help because he's still looking for young hippie types.
Yeah, which is too bad because guess whose name is on that list? William Gruenwald.
And Hart wants to put on an APB on these names just in case, and Greeley reluctantly agrees to humor her.
Right, but we don't know if he ever does. So Bunny wants to stop robbing banks. She agrees with Bill that that's enough. They have a fun little conversation. They have good chemistry, I think. He says that he's fine just taking toilets to Mexico now, and she calls him a plumbing engineer, and he likes that. However, she does make one more call to Lulu to see how the money helped her.
And Lulu says that Lloyd's got a new job, but he's still having mental issues and just can't get near meat, and now he needs therapy.
Yes, for his meat aversion, which is, I guess, crippling for a butcher. And
this therapy is expensive, which means it's time to rob another bank.
Right. She says that the problem is in his brains, which I believe is true, because if you look at him, he's just kind of holding this model airplane and just sort of like staring off into space. Like, there's obviously something seriously wrong with this guy.
So this branch of the bank looks like a mid-tier restaurant.
Or like an old-time ice cream parlor or something. You know, it's got the white and red stripes. It looks like a fun place to take the kids, but it's a bank.
So inside, another canary is set free, and another batch of security guards decides to catch the canary at the expense of anything else that might be happening in the bank.
Well, I mean, this is the second time.
Yeah, there's no pattern yet, but still word would have gotten out.
Because they wear the same outfits
and it's the same
every time.
Bank. I mean, it's different branches of the same bank.
Yeah, this is the third time the same bank has been robbed. You think they'd have like a little bit of a be on the lookout for notice. Even if they sent it through snail mail, it should have been there by now.
Well, it was in the papers. We know the canary was in the papers because that was mentioned.
Right. And they're not going all over the state. They're staying in like 1 30-mile radius.
So a bird loose in the bank, it should have set off somebody's spider sense.
Right. I mean, there's probably birds in buildings all over the place and people don't lose their crap over it. But obviously it works and they get away.
And as they drive off this time, the security guards hide behind an armored truck as they shoot at the fleeing couple.
But no hits. Okay, back with Greeley. This time he's got a new clue. It's the whole canary, not just a feather. He's very excited.
But the lab tech, who is supposed to do whatever experiments on this bird to figure out where it came from, doesn't know what to do with this bird.
Right. That's Bruno Visoda, who we have seen in plenty of other AIP movies. He's very angry. He's got other stuff to do. This isn't worth his time. And he kind of stomps off going, "They want me to dust a canary for Prince." It's kind of funny.
So Greeley wants Hart to mix and mingle with the young people to try to get a line on the robbers.
Yep, to go undercover with the young radical anarchists who just want to sit around and smoke pot and play their ukuleles, which we've seen 0 ukuleles so far in this movie.
And she's a little offended by his feelings on the younger generation.
Right, because she is one. She used to smoke pot, and he's aghast because don't you know that's illegal? She doesn't really seem to be too concerned about the legality of that. I mean, she outgrew it, obviously, and she's an upstanding citizen now, so she doesn't want him to tar everybody with the same brush.
So now we cut to Ad is on the phone with Max.
He's in a red robe now.
And apparently Ad has only paid half of what he owes him.
Right, and he's probably lost another race, so he's probably deeper in debt than before.
But Max agrees to give him another week and to carry him for $100 on gas board in the second race.
The horse names are funny. He picks them by just how cool the names sound, as opposed to getting research on the horse.
He said he was going to bet on Gray Eagle, but Gas Power was a stronger name.
Obviously. So there's a new girl in his room, and he sends her away to go get a cheese sandwich. He gives her like $1 to go get.
Well, because his bunny calls, so he's taking this call.
Right. He has to talk to his mom, and he has to do a little bit of schmoozing / begging that he probably doesn't want his girlfriend to see. It's not very dignified.
Neither is that robe. So Ad asks Bunny for another $1,000.
To clinch the deal.
Which means it's time to rob another bank.
Yep. It's never going to end with these guys.
So another bank, another canary. Bunny has the money in the bag, but it breaks and the money spills out.
Yes, and you'd think that this would be the moment she gets caught. You kind of think, well, she's a goner now. But no, there's a customer there who's a little scared, But I don't know if she knows what's going on. She just helps Bunny scoop the money up and put it back in her bag.
And they're putting it back in the bag and it just spills out again because they're not holding the other end, and then they figure out what they need to do.
Right. A little bit of a symphony of goofs here.
And Bill is kind of just rolling his eyes at all of this because he knows that they need to get moving.
Right. Yeah. They only have like a moment until someone starts aimlessly shooting at them.
Which does happen because as they ride off, 4 guards who were previously chasing a canary come out and draw their guns. I think one of them puts his glasses on as he
I guess I ought to be able to see.
Shot.
So they're on the motorcycle, scootering away, and Bunny has to stop and light something.
Yeah, Bill asks why she hasn't lit it yet, and she says she can't while they're moving, so they have to stop.
Yeah, too much wind.
So he stops and they light a wick, and what is it? It's kind of a smoke bomb.
Right, and so the cops, they're in a cop car chasing them, and so now they can't see them, and so they can get away.
And they're choking, they're coughing and gagging, and so it's a very effective smoke bomb.
Yep, did what it was intended to do.
Now Greeley is questioning a young bird guy. He found this guy that...
He's a hippie.
Yeah, and he was just crossing the street in front of the bank right after this robbery, and he had a cockatoo on his shoulder, so he's a suspect.
Right, even though that's not the MO. The MO is canary. But Greeley is absolutely adamant that he's going to make the facts fit his theory rather than the other way around. This guy knows nothing, though, and he puts up with a lot of harassment. But he's just a sad dude whose best friend is his bird. And it's kind of... Greeley is like really, really mean to him.
Hart enters and asks if she can ask him a few questions, and she uses a less accusatory line of questioning.
Yeah, and she figures out that he doesn't know anything about any canaries and thus is immaterial to this case.
And she goes to Greeley and says that she thinks he's telling the truth, and he agrees to bow to her superior knowledge of these radical bird lovers.
So they let the guy go, but not before Greeley harasses him about whether or not he has a bird license. And the poor guy is like, do I need one? And of course, no, he does not. And so it's kind of awkward just letting him go.
Another phone call with Lulu, and there's group therapy going on. Lulu says that therapy is working well, but they need more money.
For individual therapy at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this group therapy session is very strange. Everyone's admiring Lloyd playing with his model airplane. But then we cut over to Ad, where somebody's beating down his door. They want their money. There's another chick there, and he's in yet another bathrobe, I think.
And he says he needs money.
He spends all his money on little bathrobes.
So there's another alarm going off, and 4 more bumbling security guards are not shooting well at the fleeing Bunny and Bill.
She even has time to drop the cash, go back for the cash, pick up the cash, and they still get away because Bill manages to arrange it so that the cops crash into each other rather than him.
Yeah, there's 2 motorcycle cops trying to box him in, and
he darts out of the way.
Darts on the way at the last second, and it doesn't go well for those cops.
It never does.
Now, Hart is discussing this latest robbery with Greeley, and she suggests that this motorcycle may only be used for robberies since they've had no luck finding a motorcycle.
Right. So she concludes that they're driving something else with the motorcycle attached when they're not robbing banks, which is, of course, true. And kudos to her for thinking of it, because Greeley surely hasn't come up with any good ideas.
Although he takes credit for it.
Of course he does. He's a man. It's 1971.
So a roadblock / checkpoint is set up for all trucks, campers, trailers, and station wagons, looking for motorcycles and or canaries.
Right. And Bunny and Bill do go through the checkpoint, but they just wave them through because they're too old to be taken as potential suspects.
Yep. Greeley is just so certain that these are young people that anybody else is just disqualified from consideration.
Wow. Must be nice. I mean, if you knew you could get away with anything just because you're a certain age, that's a lot of power.
So back at the post office, they're shipping more cash to the kids.
And they see their own posters. There's Bill's poster, obviously. And now there's a picture of Bunny and Bill in their robbery getup. And they pull both of those down.
Now Greeley is on the phone with the chief.
He's got a cage in front of him. He's now amassed 3 whole canaries from these bank robberies. and they're his problem now.
He says he's checked every camper trailer truck owned by kids.
Yep, he has to apologize to the chief for not making any progress yet.
Now, this is interesting because he works for the state police. And I'm under the understanding that a bank robbery would be a federal offense and the FBI would come in and it would be out of jurisdiction for everybody else.
Yeah, they did send the information to Washington. They received information back from Washington. You'd think by now there'd be feds all over the place, with 4 bank robberies at least at this point. But this movie's not too concerned with reality, I would say.
They have a map on the wall, and he notes that the robberies have all been branches of the Bank of New Mexico. Hart suggests that it may be a revenge plot, and he dismisses it for half a second and then decides it may actually be a pinko scheme of young radicals as a symbolic protest.
Yeah, that's not what she means, though. But, you know, he's only going to take the information that fits with his predetermined theory. So while he's going on about these anarchists that are robbing all these banks, he starts absentmindedly rubbing Hart's shoulders. And she's like kind of taken aback by this. This is very much not standard protocol for 2 fellow officers. But she lets it go on for a little while. And then until she calls his attention to it by asking him to try a little lower. Then he realizes what he's done and he's like apologizing. But like, what a creep. She also suggests, though, that they look into foreclosures because that's what she meant by a revenge plot. And he doesn't really believe her, but he's like, yeah, go ahead and check into that. But he wants to look at if there are any threatening letters to the banks from these socialist groups.
Now Bunny and Bill are visited by a bunch of hippies for some reason. And I don't know, it looked like maybe they were there to fix the bike. Did something happen when the cops crashed into each other, maybe?
Yeah, it could be.
I don't know why they were there. It's not really stated within the context of the film.
No, they're just like taking a break at this sort of scenic overlook. So I don't know what they're doing, but they're just hanging out, and there's a bunch of hippies there for some reason.
So one offers Bill a hit of her joint. He takes it.
He doesn't do it right.
She has to instruct him how to inhale. Bunny declines. She doesn't smoke.
Bill doesn't like it. He says he'll stick with beer.
So this is the point of the film when they're making an anti-marijuana statement.
Yeah, they're like, you know, we'll pose as hippies, but we're still not going to condone these hippie tactics, these hippie activities.
Yeah, Bunny says that marijuana is legal and people shouldn't do things illegally.
Right, and she blames their parents for turning them into bad kids, which is very ironic. Very, very clueless moment here for her. It's intentional, but it still points out that...
hypocrisy.
Yeah, hypocrisy is rampant.
And she wonders where they even get that stuff, and Bill says he hears it comes from Mexico.
Wow, they're going to Mexico. How convenient.
So back at the police headquarters, Hart has gotten her information on foreclosures by the Bank of New Mexico.
Yeah, there's no threat letters, but there are 9 foreclosures.
And on that list is one Bunny O'Hare.
Right, but we know Greeley doesn't care. He's not interested in this list.
He doesn't even want to hear about it.
No. Which is sad because he's got 48 hours to solve this, he says. So clock's ticking.
So he's looking at his map again, and he says that all these robberies have occurred within a 30-mile radius. And Hart notes that there are 4 branches in that radius that have not yet been robbed.
And while he's noting this, he pokes his finger into her breast and leaves it there. He's just kind of poking her right in the nipple.
Unintentionally.
Until he realizes it, and then he pulls it away. I have a feeling that the unintentionality of this is less and less every time.
Well, he almost does it again, and you can see he goes to point and he switches hands because he doesn't want to do it again. Right. So I think it was unintentional. I think he's just a bumbling idiot. It would make a good security guard.
Well, he might need a new career soon if he doesn't solve this case.
So Bunny and Bill are preparing to sleep in the trailer.
They're in separate bunks or whatever they have rigged up for their sleep. And Bunny tells Bill, "It's been so long. I don't know if I know how to say it." And he looks a little worried, like, what? And she goes, "Good night," to his relief.
Yeah, this trailer is pretty roomy because there's room for them both to sleep.
Separately.
They might be parking the motorcycle outside while they're sleeping because it fits in there on its own. And
it also fits on the front of the truck.
I'm sure they don't leave the canaries outside, but I guess you just put something over the cage and they go to sleep. The next morning, we see Bill rigging up something on the motorcycle.
Yep, a new gadget. It's going to help them with their getaway. Although he doesn't want to do any more bank robberies. He says they've done 7. And they're really kind of testing the odds here.
They're pushing their luck.
Yeah. And it's all for her spoiled brat kids. Like, this isn't worth it.
But Bunny says this one last robbery should put the kids on their feet. So they hop on the bike and they ride off to rob another bank.
Okay, so those 4 banks that they haven't robbed yet, Greeley and Hart had decided to pick one of them. Actually, Hart picked the Socorro branch, but Greeley's like, no, let's try this one in Belen, New Mexico. So they set up a stakeout there. So there's cops everywhere outside the bank, and they themselves are in a hotel room across the street.
Yeah, there's a Bunny bread truck with cops in it. There's
Bunny bread.
And there's a guy washing his car. There's another guy working on his car.
Yeah, very subtly just hanging out there for,
Right in front of the Bank of New Mexico.
Right, as you do. So Greeley and Hart check into their hotel room, and Greeley stiffs the bellhop, much to his chagrin.
Yeah, they have a room right across the street from the bank, so they have a good vantage point.
They're sharing a room, so they both bring their luggage in, and he calls her his wife to the bellhop. One of them needs to be looking out the window, and the other one can just relax for first watch.
And Greeley's going to take the first watch, and he goes to pull a chair in front of the window and pulls his back instead.
So he can't do the first watch. We also check in with the group of hippies that we saw at the beginning of the movie. They're kind of upset that their protest message is being corrupted by these bank robbers who look like them and have a totally different agenda than they do. And they're saying the Canary gets all the credit for what they're trying to achieve. So what they decide to do is rob a bank. And they go to the Socorro branch, which is the one that Hart suggested that they stake out. So that one's unprotected. So in the hotel room, RJ Hart is giving Greeley a back rub for his aching back. It's very gross. Like, you would not want to do this for your boss. And while they're there, the phone rings and they get the news that the Socorro branch was robbed. So they're like, oh no, we staked out the wrong bank.
But Greeley decides not to call it off.
Yeah, he wants the cops to have the practice.
And he wants to continue his back rub.
Yeah. See, that's what I'm saying. This is not like totally unintentional. He wants his hands on her and her hands on him, even if it's subconscious.
So meanwhile, Bunny and Bill arrive at the bank that is actually under surveillance, but there's no place to park.
And they don't want to do the bank robbery if they can't park out front. They don't want to change up their MO right now because it's too risky.
If something works, you stick with it.
Right. And changing things just adds a different element of risk.
But there's another bank, the Eagle Bank, right across the street.
Right under the hotel that Greeley and Hart are staying in.
So Bunny suggests maybe they just do that one instead.
Yeah, I mean, a bank's a bank, right?
Bill doesn't want to because they haven't even staked out the place, but I guess he agrees because they go in and rob the bank.
Right.
The alarm goes off, and all these cops that are staking out the bank across the street are ignoring the alarm because that's not the bank they're looking at.
Man, you really gotta spell it out for these guys.
Which Greeley does. He yells at them to pursue, and they all look shocked.
Yeah, does he do it from the hotel room? Like, he puts his head out the window and is like...
Yeah, with his shirt off.
Yeah, ugh. So finally they give chase. And we find out what the gadget was that Bill had been working on.
Yeah, they drive past a marked police car who gives chase, and Bunny releases this device that Bill had installed on the bike, and it lets out what looks like a bunch of giant jacks.
Yeah, it does. Spikes something.
Which blows out the cop's tire, and they're forced to stop.
Yeah, even though the cops are now unable to pursue, they do shoot at Bunny and Bill, who try to ride off to safety.
Bill notices that Bunny isn't really responding, so he stops and lifts her off the bike and checks her and discovers that she has been shot in the shoulder.
Yeah, so now we have a real consequence for these bank robberies. He wants to take her to the doctor, but in all, true bad guy fashion, you can't go to the doctor. You can't go to the emergency room with a wound sustained in an illegal activity. So she wants him to be a surgeon and take the bullet out of her, but only after they mail the cash.
Now, there's supposed to be another roadblock set up, but the police aren't able to set up this roadblock because there's a sit-in the middle of the street. Yeah,
it's not even a street. It's like a highway. It's like a regular road. They're not in the middle of a city or something. They're out in the middle of wherever, and they're blocking the road from both sides. So now everybody's here. The hippies are there. Bunny and Bill are there. Greeley and Hart are there.
Yeah, Bill tries to leave because he doesn't want to go through another police roadblock.
But he gets blocked in because the cop car parks right next to him. So now there's cars on either side of him and in front of him.
So Greeley has a plan to put an end to this, and he goes up to Bill's truck and, quote-unquote, borrows it. He scoots Bill over and basically bulldozes his way through the crowd and causes a disbursement of hippies.
Yeah, they just don't want to get run over. They're not that dedicated to their cause.
So he thanks them and starts to leave, but he hears chirping birds.
And quick-thinking Bill says, "Oh, those are my wife's parakeets." And Greeley, being the dumb as dirt detective that he is, accepts that explanation.
So they're free to go.
Again. All the while that Bunny is bleeding out here, too. Just don't forget that.
So now Bill is prepping for surgery. He's sterilizing a pair of pliers so he can remove the bullet from Bunny's shoulder.
Yep. And she says she's ready. He digs in. She screams as we cut away and scene.
So the next day, Bill says that Bunny needs a vacation from robbing banks, but with her bum arm and all, and Mexico might just be the ticket.
Yeah, and I think now she's finally like, okay, yes, we probably shouldn't do this anymore. However, there's still bank robberies going on. It's the lookalike hippies, or, well, actually the OG hippies, are still robbing banks.
So as the hippies leave the bank, the security guard pulls a gun, and Frank, the hippie, shoots the gun right out of his hand. So this is a totally different MO than Bill and Bunny would have used.
Yeah, they only claim to have a gun. They never had one. They never had any weapon, and they never hurt anybody, not even the canary. So now Greeley gives the orders to shoot to kill on these bank robbers, as if they hadn't tried before and just completely and utterly failed to do so. I guess the seriousness has now been taken up to the next level.
But what's interesting about this robbery is that it's further south than the others. And it looks like they're headed for the Mexican border. Now, this isn't Bill and Bunny.
Right.
This was a different pair of bank robbers.
But coincidentally, it's also the destination of Bill and Bunny.
So Greeley sets up a team to head to the border to cut them off.
Yeah, this is a real manhunt with helicopters and a bunch of cars. And now they're getting other jurisdictions involved. So they're finally getting serious with these bank robbers.
And it's successful. They catch the couple, and Greeley rushes to the scene, and in his excitement, he crashes into the back of Bill's truck because they happen to arrive at the same time wondering what was going on because there's police sirens, there's helicopters.
Yeah, the traffic is stopped. They can't go. So yeah, Greeley crashes into the back of his truck, and the back of the truck cab comes open, and there's a big cage of canaries in there.
And a motorcycle.
And Greeley and Hart are both in the car. Greeley wants to check and see if everything's okay. And Bill's like, no, let me just get the door shut. But while he's doing that, Hart gets a glimpse of what's inside.
But Greeley's ignorant, and he's more concerned about the damage he caused.
He's willfully ignorant because he thinks that he's caught his bank robbers.
After they get the door closed, he hears the birds, and then he recognized them as being the couple with the parakeets from the day before.
Right. He doesn't see the birds, though, because then he would know that these are yellow canaries and not green parakeets. But RJ does see, so she knows what's up. However, she doesn't say anything until they've pulled away. And then she tells Greeley that, I think you just let the robbers go.
And he thinks she's joking.
Right. And she does these like weird ha-ha faces. She makes a weird face and does a weird laugh here.
And another weird face and another weird laugh.
Yeah, it's like a very strange scene. I guess she just realized that he's never going to take her seriously. And so she tries to laugh it off.
So Bill and Bunny are free to go to Mexico, and they hit the border. And he's recognized there as a regular, and they call him Senior Toilet.
Wow, what a designation to go through life as.
And they're able to cross the border, but Bunny is now having second thoughts, and she doesn't want to leave her kids.
Right, so she wants to make one last phone call to check in on them, and she gets to a payphone and makes
2 payphones.
Yeah, she gets to a pair of payphones. Imagine finding that in this day and age. And she makes 2 calls, one to each kid. And she's got them, like, both phones up to her ear, and she's trying to talk to both of them. Ad is in a hotel room. He looks like he's in big trouble. This is where we see Larry Linville just sort of glowering at him.
Yeah, there are 3 men sitting in the room with Ad, and one of them is Max, Larry Linville.
He's still in a bathrobe, by the way.
And Ad says he needs money, surprise, surprise.
And Lulu also wants something.
Lulu says Lloyd needs analysis, which means more money, please.
And they realize that Mom has them both on the phone. And so they start bickering, don't give him money, don't give her money. And she finally gets her fill of her grasping, greedy kids.
Yep, she hangs up both phones and turns to Bill and says, let's go to Mexico.
And Bill says, what about your kids? And she says,
screw them.
So they successfully head into Mexico with the credits rolling over as they drive through the dusty dirt roads to somewhere, I hope. They say they're going to Escondida, not Escondido. So one of the credits that rolls over is for John Astin, and he's called a creative consultant. And I can only conclude that means that he brought his own bathrobes to the shoot.
You're listening to the American International Podcast, and we are discussing Bunny O'Hare from 1971.
So this movie had a pretty small cast. There were a bunch of people who were named in the cast, but they didn't really figure into the plot too significantly.
Yeah, as we mentioned, Larry Linville is credited as Max, but he doesn't have any lines.
Right, he's just sort of there as a figure, not an actual character.
And not many of these actors would appear in other AIP productions. Ernest Borgnine would appear in Sunday in the Country and Willard, neither of which was produced by AIP, but both were distributed by AIP through Cinerama.
John Astin was in a movie called Viva Max, which wasn't really an AIP movie, but apparently got some like secondhand distribution when they were in syndication.
And Reva Rose, as Lulu, did appear in the AIP film 3 in the Attic.
So Bette Davis is a very big name star. This is her only AIP movie. And there's probably a reason for that, because it didn't go well for them. The line that she said in the movie about her kids, at the very end where she said, screw them, was actually looped in by a Bette Davis impersonator at the end. She actually dropped the F-bomb there.
You can tell when you watch it that's not actually what she was saying.
Right. And it didn't make her very happy that they overdubbed her with an impersonator. And she also wasn't thrilled that they kind of changed the tone of the movie. She thought she was doing a social satire, and it was really turned into a slapstick movie. And she wasn't thrilled about that. She sued AIP for $3.3 million in damages. It was later dropped, but Samuel Arkoff would recount in his biography later that working with Bette Davis was no fun. He said that we found that big names often have big heads, and when they create problems, they're usually big ones. And that was the case with Bunny O'Hare. And then he said, in retrospect, Bunny O'Hare was not only the wrong vehicle for AIP, but it was wrong for Bette Davis, too.
This was interesting for me to watch because I admittedly have not seen a lot of Bette Davis roles. I've not seen All About Eve. I haven't seen any of her output from the 40s, 50s. What I've seen is the Bette Davis of later years, from Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, from The Anniversary, Watch Her in the Woods.
Yeah, so the latter years of Bette Davis.
And this is a very different role from any of those.
Yeah, it is a comedy, but she's not a comedic character. Like, you feel for her, and they do kind of put her in silly situations, but I think she kind of maintains her dignity throughout. And it does seem like maybe the movie was at odds with itself in trying to have a serious subject, but also present it as a goofy comedy. So I can see why she was a little upset at the way it turned out.
Yeah, in many ways, this is just a weird movie to begin with. The storyline about aging bank robbers I suppose it's fun, but it doesn't seem very commercial.
No, it's a pretty niche movie. And this movie did tank at the box office. It had a $900,000 budget, but it really just was unloved by audiences. It did have a little second life in syndication. It made like the CBS movie of the week a few years later. But after that, it was kind of forgotten until we found it.
Yeah. Just a few weeks ago, this movie was incredibly rare and hard to find. As we're recording this, literally 11 days ago, someone posted it on YouTube. And because of that, I assume there are all kinds of gray market DVD sellers online that are now offering this film. But it wasn't available a mere month ago.
Yeah, so we're part of the renaissance of this movie. In a way. Speaking of the cast, this is Bruno Visotto's last role in any movie. And obviously he's been a staple for AIP movies. And we also had a fun cameo from New Mexico Governor David Cargo, who played a state trooper. I have no idea which one, but he's in the movie somewhere. That was probably part of the permission to get to shoot all this crazy madcap action on his state highways. The movie got kind of a lukewarm reception by critics as well, although Vincent Canby from the New York Times said even though it was silly and foolishly entertaining, it was nonsense of quite an acceptable order, filled with absurd chases and stock characters who've been conceived and played with affection, and said Bette Davis gives a performance that may be one of the funniest and most legitimate of her career. So that's high praise.
The tagline for this movie was, "Enjoy those golden years with the Bunny O'Hare Old Age Pension Plan."
You know, that might be a good idea, Jeff. I mean, we're no spring chickens. Maybe one day we'll kind of take a page from this movie and secure our retirement. I don't know if we can do that these days. I mean, they had one camera in the bank, and now the cameras are everywhere. And I don't think all the cops are really as stupid as they are in this movie. But, you know, I'll put a pin in that for later.
Maybe we have to go to New Mexico.
That's just next state over. No problem. I did appreciate that the character of R.J. Hart was probably, even though I hated the way it ended, I love the character of R.J. Hart in this, in that she was the one person who knew what was going on, although no one took her seriously, and there's even unintentional sexual harassment is still sexual harassment going on. But I thought that was like a really interesting way to introduce a female character and look at the conditions for working women who had professional careers during that time. So that was kind of a nice twist in the movie, I thought.
Yeah, her powers of deduction are really good. And there's no real evidence for her to give the theory she gives, but she's right 100% of the time.
Right. It's just unfortunate that her boss is a flaming idiot, but who can't relate to that? So do we want to give our ratings of this movie?
Yeah, I think we should.
I'll go first.
Okay.
I'm going to give this an I because it's entertaining for what it is. It is a movie with two different agendas. It's trying to infuse this sort of serious problem of people having no social safety net and nowhere to go and nothing to do into a slapstick comedy. And I don't think the two elements mesh together very well. So I think if you took the slapstick out of it, I think this could be a really good movie. Unfortunately, they went way over the top with Jack Cassidy's character. He is way too dumb. The part where she gets shot, that's very serious. And that's like, you know, a really bad thing that happened. And I think that had they played that for drama rather than, you know, just a little bit of drama inserted into a goofy comedy, I think it would have been a much better movie. So I'm going to give this something in the middle for having potential and being mildly entertaining, but not achieving greatness.
I want to say I really enjoyed this movie, and it surprised me that I enjoyed it as much as I did. When this film was first selected for us to watch, it was still pretty much unavailable. And we managed to track down a copy. And I was excited to do it just because it was so rare. And we were going to be able to talk about something that not a lot of people have seen.
Right.
So I was ecstatic that I actually enjoyed the movie on top of it. But I think the reason that this movie has kind of disappeared is because it's very mediocre. It's definitely not something that would come up on a list of top 50 AIP films.
Not even 100.
But despite that, I did think it was entertaining. I am also going to give it an I.
Well, it's in the middle. Yeah, it's a mediocre. It's in the middle.
But I'm also going to highly recommend that you watch it because it's an enjoyable way to spend 90 minutes. It's not a great film. It never will be a great film. It never was a great film. But it's not entertaining.
Right. I agree with that.
So it is on YouTube. So I suggest when you have 90 minutes to kill, you check it out.
Even though it's got a over-the-top character, but it's a good look at conditions in 1971 for older people, for hippies, for cops, for working people. I think it's a product of its time, and it's worth watching.
And if you think that the police are bumbling idiots, then you would feel right at home in this universe.
I mean, I don't think we're worried about them being bumbling idiots. It's, you know, there are other concerns, but that's not one of them.
So I guess that wraps up another episode of the American International Podcast.
Yeah, thanks for listening. I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And I'm Jeff Markin.
Until next time, we'll meet you at the drive-in.
Follow the American International Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, and Letterboxd at AIP_pod and on Facebook at facebook.com/American International Podcast.
The American International Podcast is produced and edited by Jeff Markin.
A man whose mind is distorted by hatred.
And Cheryl Lightfoot.
A girl hungry for too many things.
The American International Podcast is part of the Pop Culture Entertainment Network.